When is a wiretap not a wiretap? It's something, I don't know.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, when it comes to issues of national security and some of the challenges we have understanding Trump policy, Marc Genest is a terrific guy to go to, and he is here tonight, professor from the Naval War College who speaks for himself on these matters, but somebody who I rely on, and I know the viewers rely on pretty significantly for some good, constructive, objective conversation here. And so Marc is my guest tonight. It is great to have you aboard. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday night. I just want to get to a couple of things that are happening in the state as we speak. So let me pop over to the rundown camera and just hustle through. In fact, the bottom two items there, budget adjustments and wiretapping. Marc and I will kind of work through it one by one. But this is the kind of thing that the governor has been doing, rallying students both at their high schools and at the General Assembly for day one of hearings on the 2 years of free tuition. Headline here, Providence Journal, Raimondo argues for free tuition, and she has been arguing, no doubt about that. This has been a tour through the state of Rhode Island where she has solicited the support of town government people for the most part and members of the General Assembly that are in each particular town. I've been to a couple of these events. I take umbrage with these events. The governor and I have had honest debate about whether it's appropriate for her to be having these events, but she stands firm on her own 2 feet, saying that this is not about her. This is not about, you know, some kind of refrigerator sticker she can put up on her national platform. It's not about New York Times puff pieces. It's not about any of those kinds of things. It's about getting Rhode Islanders their opportunity who just fall woefully short of the money they need to pursue a career.
People in the community, and you say, why'd you drop out? And they say, well, the gap was, you know, $700. You dropped out of college for $700? Yes. Where was I going to get the money? So that student, if we had given them a hand, $1,000 scholarship, and they graduate with a degree in nursing from Rick, they're going to go work in Rhode Island and be a great nurse.
Here's the thing. That is probably true. I'm not going to say that the governor is fibbing about these examples that she cites, but there's no empirical data that's been shown by anybody. And when you have a $30 million public policy expenditure, you really need some empirical data to support it. No empirical data whatsoever that shows us there's this big movement of kids who just can't finish because they don't have the scratch to do so. And of course, when it's CCRI versus Rick and URI, these are two very different dynamics. I actually have more empathy for tuition subsidy for 2 years at CCRI because generally, by the way, they have a 10% graduation on time rate there, 10%. It doesn't mean that they're a failing institution. It means that it's used for different kinds of purposes. There might be a plausible argument there, but the more significant tuitions at Rick and URI, while they're affordable on scale for the rest of the country in comparison, those are significant amounts of money that are, I just think the thinking on this, making junior and senior year at those places, as long as you got a 2.0 and you're on the 60 credit speed up until junior year, are just not well thought out. The administrators of those schools think it's manna from heaven. We've already had a conversation with Dr. Dooley about that. You can find that show, it's a couple of weeks back, right, Lex, on foxprovidence.com, and you can hear what he has to say about that. But by and large, I still stick to this notion that this 2-year free college tuition program for everybody, no matter where you are and what you make and what you do, is more about a national platform for the governor than it is about practical investment in education here. By the way, if you want to spend $30 million helping out education, why don't you do a tuition freeze like they did in Wisconsin? Yeah, Wisconsin, they got a 5-year tuition freeze coming. It takes money to do that too. More on that as the debate rages on. It may be dead in the water, by the way. The House Speaker is not a big fan of this. Pot debate, just kind of interesting. I want to mention this because I thought this is coincidental on the front page of the Journal today. This gentleman is alleged to have been black marketing some of the medical marijuana, and that's always been a worry about the medical marijuana in Rhode Island. I put that up as part of the argument that we will have tomorrow night. I think we've got the folks from Regulate Rhode Island who support legalization of marijuana and smart approaches to marijuana coming on tomorrow night, so make a note on that. And again, the 7:30 shows are preempted because of movement of the networks and basketball, but so many of you watch the show on Fox Providence at this time frame, so thank you very much. Budget adjustments. This is kind of interesting. Trump administration. New York Times put out this kind of a graphic. It might be hard unless you got one of those 72-inch TVs to actually understand this, but it doesn't take much to tell you that there's a 10% increase in the proposal for defense spending, 7% increase in Homeland Security, and a 31% drop in the EPA, and a 29% drop in state and other development programs, meaning there's a major shift going on here. Professor Genest will comment on that as well. My friend, welcome. Nice to have you.
It was a pleasure.
Trump administration making a statement here.
Absolutely. They know this is not going to survive contact, but you're going in there appeasing the people that voted for Trump in the first place. So this is, you know, he comes up to bat, and it's the first strike.
Do we need to spend more money on defense?
Yes, we do, because we have been fighting 2 wars for over 15 years now. The military is tired. Some of its weapons are depleted and need refurbishing. So there's a whole series of good reasons to increase defense spending. That said, you don't take it out of the Department of State, because the Department of State provides crucial soft power, which the military relies on. If you're going to cut aid to food programs or development programs, it's going to make our jobs in Iraq and Afghanistan much more difficult.
I just want to make sure that everybody understands, because I ripped through that really quickly, and I might have inferred, I was thinking the Department of State, but this is not about the states. This is not about aid to the states. This is the State Department.
Correct.
And this is a conversation that I think is really fascinating, because when Rex Tillerson was in the process of being chosen as the Secretary of State during the nomination process, we had a lot of conversations with a lot of smart people about what the Donald Trump administration would look like in relation to the State Department. Whether or not the State Department would actually be, as it has been for the most part, kind of its own really important cog in the wheel doing business, or whether it would be nothing but a shill for the White House. I think this is kind of a reflection on that, isn't it?
Well, remember, the Secretary of State serves at the pleasure of the President.
Yes.
So his primary job...
Always has, but, right? Does it, well,
there are 2 types of...
does this spending priority reflect how they feel about state in general?
I think this is candidate Trump speaking to the people who voted for him. There's a misnomer among the American public that we spend a lot of money on foreign aid. We actually spend less than 1% of our total budget on foreign aid. So we spend a little amount on foreign aid. But it's always popular to cut, because Americans think, hey, my taxes should go for Americans, not for foreigners. That said, what they don't understand is that the vast majority of foreign aid is giving grants and allowing countries to buy American goods. So we're literally helping other countries buy American wheat, buy American products. So it does benefit the home front as well as our relations with other countries.
So what does this do, cutting it some 30%?
It's penny wise, pound foolish. You don't do this because the whole purpose of using the military is to achieve a political objective. Well, the military is only one instrument that the nation state has at its disposal to achieve those objectives. The other very important instrument is diplomacy, foreign and economic aid, and the ability of the United States to project not just power, but to prove to other countries that we are a force for good. And foreign aid helps us do that.
Well, you look at this, everything is down in spending other than Veterans Affairs, and I doubt the public would have an argument with that. Homeland Security up 7%, Veteran Affairs up 6%, Homeland Security up 7%, and Defense up 10%. Everything else takes a hit. Agriculture, labor, justice, health and human services, commerce, education, transportation, HUD, interior, energy, treasury, they all take a hit. So if you want to increase the defense spending, where do you take it from?
Well, I mean, you can raise taxes, which Republicans are loath to do. You could also, I think, raise military spending less than they are proposing and have cuts elsewhere. Now remember, this is part of the philosophy of the Trump candidacy, which is government is bloated, it's too large, most of these programs don't work as well as we think they do, so they should be cut. So this is both the merging of international foreign policy as well as domestic politics, so it's the ideology merging.
I wonder, though, if they've, listen, I'm not sure they did a lot of diligence period in the campaign world, never mind the first couple of months. So I just wonder whether this is nothing more than conceptual, speaking to your response to the constituent rhetorical objective here. I mean, it doesn't seem to me that they really have their handle on what the spending is in any of these departments anyway.
Well, remember, the president proposes,
Congress
the Congress disposes. This is his initial stand. This is the beginning of negotiations over the budget. This happens in every presidential campaign and in every presidency. So this is common. The president comes in and says, here's exactly what I want. I won't cut anything. I mean, I won't negotiate anything, and then they fall back on what they probably can get. So it's again, you're playing baseball here. It's your first strike. You get two more.
Yeah. The Republican Congress, do you think they're in close to lockstep with this concept?
No, they're not. I think the Republican Congress understands, particularly in the House, they're up in 2 years. And if they go along with some of these strong cuts, that they'll have problems back home in their constituency. So I think they're going to moderate things. You're going to still see cuts, and you're going to still see an increase in defense spending, but it'll be moderated over the course of negotiations.
All right. There's a lot of interaction with the Republican Congress, of course. Some necessary and some completely ridiculous. We'll talk about both when we come back. Stay with us. Okay, so this whole wiretap thing. When is a wiretap a wiretap? I don't know. Well, listen and watch.
Wiretap covers a lot of different things.
President Donald Trump breaking his silence Wednesday on his claim that former President Obama ordered wiretaps on Trump Tower.
I will be perhaps speaking about this next week.
Trump, still offering no evidence, defended the accusation by vaguely citing media reports that he had seen and hinting that more will be revealed in the coming weeks.
I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront.
FBI Director James Comey offering no response to questions on the issue Wednesday.
Director Comey, have you seen any evidence that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower?
Comey's boss, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, asked if he had given Trump any reason to think he was wiretapped, was blunt.
Look, the answer is no.
Fellow Republicans in Congress casting further doubt on Trump's claim.
I don't think there was an actual tap of Trump Tower.
I've seen no evidence of a wiretap being requested.
Nothing that would suggest President Obama had President Trump wiretapped at Trump Tower, as far as you know.
That's correct.
Senator Lindsey Graham also saying he hasn't yet seen evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and voicing the frustration felt by lawmakers with the time it's taking to get what they need from the Justice Department.
The longer it takes to answer my letter, the more concerned and suspicious I'm beginning to be.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that part later. Wiretap. A Saturday morning cruise on Twitter by President Trump has everybody spinning in Washington. I don't know that the country's spinning, though. Every time I ask about this on the radio, on WPRO, weekdays 3 to 6, I get some very interesting responses. Yeah, there's those that are horrified by what the president has done, but for the most part, he's built kind of a threshold of what the heck amongst the electorate that this stuff almost washes over them or past them. So, A, do you agree with my analysis there? And B, what's he doing?
He is paying a price. I mean, his approval rating has gone down 6 or 7 points in the last month. And so I think there is a price to be paid. But you're right. People are used to Trump doing foolish things or saying foolish things. It's why you teach your kids when you tweet, watch out what you say. And unfortunately, Donald was never told that.
I don't know why he doubles down, though. With Tucker Carlson, he more or less suggests now, hey, broader definition, and by the way, stick around. Next week or two, you're going to see some things here. Like what?
It is possible, and I think this is where he's going to fall back, that NSA, CIA, FBI were following either some Russians or some banks that they were curious about, and this is how they came across Flynn in his conversation with the Russian diplomats. So it is possible that some surveillance of Russian nationals became intertwined with members of the Trump candidacy. And it is possible that's how he's going to explain it. That is the only thing I can think of that they can possibly get away with.
So the Russian investigation is going to, in some way, intersect with this wiretapping assertion, and there might be a thread of discretionary definition that might be able to be connected to the two, which will give the president a chance to be able to say, see, I told you.
That's what I predict. And most Americans will accept that because the nature of surveillance is, you know, you are going to surreptitiously be caught having a conversation in an innocent fashion with some member that's being surveilled. So you're going to be caught up in this web. And that's easy to explain to Americans. And it also makes Americans nervous. I mean, whomever I talk to, it's possible the FBI is listening in on a conversation. We've heard this for the last several years. So when Trump makes that argument, many Americans will sit back and go, yeah, okay, he was tapped.
But this notion that President Obama is a bad or sick guy, the emotion that comes out of that tweet, the unprecedented look back at the predecessor in such a short period of time and so aggressively like that, is not going to be lost on everybody. It's no matter what thread may or may not be loosely connected to the Russian investigation, for him to say, that's what I was talking about. I think it's hard for discerning Americans to get by the idea that this is a significant and damaging and world-worrying thing he did here.
Well, just remember what Trump said about Cruz and his father, about John McCain, about any of his opponents during the Republican primaries. You see a pattern of behavior that is a strident attacks on opponents, and he continues to get away with saying some wild things about individuals, and then people just move on. And that the common refrain is, oh, that's just Trump being Trump. Now let me talk about what he's doing for jobs and the economy and whatnot. And this puts pressure on him to actually produce. These statements, these wild statements, will go and hurt him significantly unless he produces some legislation that actually helps people.
Yeah, but for a guy who focuses on world security and the like, for a guy who focuses on, you know, all that is keeping this country safe, meaning you and your studies, it has to have some, in a silo, real detrimental effect.
It makes me nervous every time I hear he's tweeted something out, particularly when we're talking about our allies, some of the statements he's made with regard to the EU, to NATO. I mean, that caused a lot of consternation in Europe. It really, and it's still causing some problems in Europe. So our allies are very nervous about what Trump is going to say next. That said, if you want to be cynical about it, it does give Trump a degree of leverage over the Europeans. Europeans now are paying more into NATO. So, you know, it may have been a tough thing for him to say, but he has finally pushed the Europeans into anteing up and paying their dues for NATO.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the team. Most folks think the team around Donald Trump is pretty good, defense and security-wise. We'll check in with the professor on that. Stay with us. The good news, Marc Genest, is that, and we've talked about this before, the dichotomy of analysis on this Trump early presidency is that he does have some really solid people in really key positions between the defense secretary and the NSA director and even the UN ambassadors already knocked him back once, re the Russian situation. They're not going to suffer a lot of this silliness. At some point, one of those guys is going to say, listen, take your phone and put it somewhere because you're hurting our work out there, right?
Well, they've already taken stands that are in contradiction to Trump's statements as candidate. So Mattis reiterated his support for NATO. The UN ambassador has spoken very harshly about the Russians, saying they are our enemy. So you have a whole litany of individuals who serve the president who continually contradict what the president says.
The Russian involvement in the election, I think we all agree, has nothing to do with voting precincts and voting machines and that kind of thing. I think a lot of people have gotten confused over what's been alleged here. But where is this thing going to go? What will punctuate this discussion about Russian involvement in propaganda, DNC, WikiLeaks, all of that? Do you see an end game for this?
I don't, as long as the Democrats can benefit from it. This has become a partisan issue.
But Republicans run the shop over there.
They do, but I mean, a lot of Democrats are keeping this story going by innuendo. There is absolutely no evidence coming from Clapper, coming from FBI, coming from any of our intelligence communities. There's not a shred of evidence that there's any collusion between the Trump administration or Trump candidacy and the Russians. So as that goes, I don't see it really having I don't see it having legs unless the Democrats find something they can grasp onto.
Well, what is the place that you find the evidence? I mean, we haven't had the formal hearings that would give us some clarity on this. So the notion that there's no evidence is what? Just based on journalistic work?
No, it's based on statements coming from our intelligence community and the FBI.
That what they're tilling right now really doesn't have much.
No, but again, investigations often start out looking at one subject and then drift off and find other subjects to investigate. That's why the Trump administration is so concerned about not having an independent prosecutor. If you have that, then they have a purview to investigate anything they come across. And that's always dangerous for any administration.
And this relationship with the intel community in the White House is strained at best.
Yes.
Yeah, no matter who heads it. I mean, you know, our new CIA director is well reputed, I'm sure will do some good work there, but he's got an entire bureaucracy. We've talked about this thing before.
Well, that's why
it still feels short-shrifted.
That's why I'm pretty certain that there's not much to this story about Russia's collusion with the Trump candidacy, because there are so many leaks coming from the intel community that if there was a there, we would know about it.
Yeah, the leaks, including tax return leaks, are just plentiful in the White House. I mean, it's not your...
Well, you reap what you sow. You attack the establishment's going to attack back.
At the same time, I don't know if you've got a theory. It's right. It's off your expertise, but do you have a theory on, first of all, Rachel Maddow and the hyperbolic way that they presented this 2005 tax return was just, it actually ruined the credibility of the exercise. Then again, Donald Trump paid $38 million worth of taxes in that particular year. I mean, if I had to put $5 down on a bet, I would think that Donald Trump or his team leaked that. Why wouldn't they? I mean, there's nothing. You're talking about no there. I mean, there's nothing to bite into. Is this not the strangest environment you've seen when it comes to the White House?
There's an old adage. The ship of state is the only ship that leaks from the top down. So administration is always the source of most leaks. This is unusual in that there were hangovers from the Obama administration, who obviously were leaking information to the Trump administration. But here you're seeing return to normalcy, where the Trump administration's sending out trial balloons and its own leaks to try to win the narrative.
So you're with me. It's most likely them.
It's all
assumptions. And then they get all, and then they play the role of being offended by the whole situation. All righty. Well. Then there's fake news, but we don't have any time for it. Thanks, Professor. Good to see you. Final word when we come back. Coming up tomorrow night, we'll have some pro and con on the legalization of marijuana. You know, Massachusetts is knocking on the doorstep of having full retail, and they're working out the details on that. Rhode Island's kind of watching. We'll see what happens. Good night.